The Galactic Council's Hall of Eternity was no place for whispers, but the ancient chambers were alive with them. Representatives of a dozen species, some sleek and scaled, others towering and covered in fur, huddled in tense clusters beneath the glowing banners of their respective worlds. The air was thick with unease as the Zorathian Elder, a being of shimmering opalescent skin, raised her staff to call for silence. "We convene today for a matter that may reshape the very foundation of our existence," she intoned, her voice carrying a tremor that belied her centuries of experience. "A discovery has been made. One that cannot be ignored." The murmur of voices ceased. All eyes turned to a projected image hovering above the central dais. It depicted a series of intricately carved symbols glowing faintly on an ancient stone tablet. Even to the untrained eye, there was something unsettlingly familiar about the patterns etched into its surface. These artifacts were uncovered on Karam IV, a barren world long thought devoid of significance, Elder Taylor continued. Until now. The inscriptions date back over 2 million standard cycles, older than any known civilization in this council. A collective gasp rippled through the chamber. Such a date defied all known records of galactic history. The Corvex ambassador, his crystalline body refracting the chamber's light, leaned forward, his voice a sharp chime. "What is the relevance of this to our assembly? Surely an ancient artifact is no cause for alarm." Elder Taylor turned her luminous eyes toward him. "Because these writings speak of a species called the Children of Fire. A species with uncanny strength, unrelenting will, and the power to endure where others would perish. A species that matches the description of humanity." The chamber erupted into chaos. Ambassadors shouted over one another, their voices blending into a cacophony of disbelief and panic. Only one figure remained silent, her sharp eyes narrowing as she took in the revelation. Dr. Elise Ward, Earth's representative to the Council, felt her pulse quicken. She was used to humanity being dismissed as a curious anomaly, a young species on a hostile world with no significant galactic standing. But this was different. Order. Taylor's staff struck the ground, sending a resonant hum through the chamber. The voices stilled, though tension hung thick in the air. "The artifact's symbols have been partially translated," Taylor said. "They describe the Children of Fire as beings forged in the crucible of death worlds. Resilient, unyielding, and dangerous." Elise finally spoke, her voice cutting through the tension. "With all due respect, Elder Taylor, humanity has existed on Earth for millennia without destabilizing the galaxy. What evidence suggests these writings refer to us?" Taylor gestured, and the projection shifted to display a set of coordinates. Elise's stomach dropped as she recognized them immediately, Earth's location in the Milky Way. "The artifact specifically references this system," Taylor said. "And these coordinates match the placement of ancient star charts predating any known civilization. There can be no doubt." Elise clenched her fists beneath the table. Humanity's struggles, wars, famines, triumphs had always felt isolated to Earth, a narrative contained within its blue sphere. Now, that narrative was colliding with something far larger, something terrifying. "What else do the inscriptions say?" asked the Vorthan delegate, his fur bristling with apprehension. "They speak of a prophecy," Taylor said, her voice heavy. "When the Children of Fire awaken, the galaxy shall tremble. For they shall rise against the dark, and their flames shall burn eternal." Silence fell again, deeper this time. The weight of the words pressed down on every being in the chamber. Elise felt a chill run through her. "Awaken," she repeated. "What does that mean?" "We do not know," Taylor admitted. "But the implications are clear. Humanity may not merely be another young race. You may be the inheritors of a legacy far older and far more dangerous than we ever imagined." The chamber erupted into arguments once more, but Elise's mind was elsewhere. She stared at the coordinates, her thoughts racing. What legacy? What danger? And most importantly, what did it mean for humanity to awaken? Her unease deepened as Taylor's final words echoed in her mind, "We must investigate further. If the Children of Fire are real, they may be the only hope against what lies beyond the stars, or the greatest threat we have ever faced." The council adjourned, but the questions lingered, heavier than the silence that followed. The icy winds of Antarctica howled like a living thing, their ferocity testing even the reinforced landing craft of the Galactic Council. The vast white expanse stretched endlessly, broken only by jagged peaks and the occasional dark patch of exposed rock. Here, in one of Earth's most desolate regions, the Council's expedition sought answers buried beneath millennia of ice. Dr. Elise Ward stood at the edge of the landing ramp, clutching her coat tightly against the biting cold. Around her, alien researchers in heated environmental suits worked diligently, unloading equipment and setting up scanners. Above them, the Council's flagship loomed in orbit, a silent sentinel watching the unfolding events below. She glanced back at Elder Taylor, who stepped down from the craft with her ever-present air of authority. "Remind me," Elise said, her breath visible in the freezing air, "why we're digging in the middle of nowhere." Taylor's eyes glimmered. "The artifact star charts led us here. Beneath this ice lies something tied to the Children of Fire. What we find could confirm or refute the inscriptions. Or open a can of worms humanity doesn't need," Elise muttered under her breath. The expedition scanners pierced through the thick ice, revealing a massive, irregular structure entombed below. It wasn't natural, its geometric precision was unmistakable. The lead scientist, a Chronali with a serpentine neck and 6 dexterous arms, hissed with excitement. "The structure is at least 1.8 million standard cycles old. Impossible. No known species had interstellar capability then." Elise's stomach tightened. She knew Earth's history well enough. Human civilization hadn't even crawled out of caves at that point. Whatever was down there wasn't human, or at least not modern human. Hours later, as the drills carved a path into the icy tomb, Elise found herself standing at the entrance to a cavernous chamber. It was an enormous hollow of glittering frost, the air heavy with an almost oppressive silence. The walls were adorned with carvings that pulsed faintly, as though aware of their visitors. "What the hell is this place?" Elise whispered. "It's a vault," Taylor replied, her tone reverent. "A repository of knowledge, or a warning." The carvings depicted scenes that made Elise's pulse race. They showed humanoid figures standing amidst chaos, their forms wreathed in flames. In one image, a solitary figure held back an overwhelming wave of darkness, their blazing light the only defense. The Chronali scientist chimed in, his voice trembling. "The language is consistent with the artifact from Karam 4. It references resilience, adaptation, and rebirth. These symbols align with the term Children of Fire." Elise traced her gloved fingers over one of the carvings, her breath catching as the surface flared with light. She jerked her hand back. "Did I?" "The carvings appear to be reactive to your touch," Taylor observed, stepping closer. "You may possess genetic markers tied to this legacy." "Legacy?" Elise shook her head. "I'm just a human. I don't have some ancient, cosmic bloodline." But even as she said it, doubt gnawed at her. There had always been something unusual about humanity's resilience. Their ability to adapt to harsh conditions. Their stubborn refusal to surrender, no matter the odds. Traits that had baffled the Galactic Council for years. As the researchers worked to decipher more of the carvings, one of the walls groaned, splitting open with a thunderous crack. Behind it lay a central chamber, its centerpiece a monolithic obelisk covered in glowing runes. At its base was an inscription that sent chills down Elise's spine. "The abyss stirs. Only the Children of Fire may hold the line." Taylor's expression darkened. "The abyss. We thought it was a myth. A nightmare from our galaxy's oldest records. What is it?" Elise asked, her voice low. "The abyss," Taylor said, her voice grave, "is a hive mind. A force of entropy and destruction that nearly consumed the galaxy millions of years ago. We believed it was vanquished, though at great cost. If these inscriptions are accurate, it may be returning." Elise's thoughts raced. And humanity is supposed to be the solution? We barely made it to the stars. How are we supposed to stop something like that? Before Taylor could answer, a deep vibration rippled through the chamber. The obelisk began to pulse with light, faster and faster, until it cast the entire room in blinding radiance. A holographic figure emerged, its form indistinct but undeniably alien. It spoke in a language Elise didn't understand, yet the words echoed in her mind as though they had been burned into her consciousness. To the inheritors of the fire, the time has come to fulfill your purpose. Rise, or all will fall to the abyss. As the message ended, the chamber fell silent, but its implications screamed in Elise's mind. She looked to Taylor, whose solemn expression confirmed what she feared. The galaxy's greatest threat had returned, and humanity might be the only ones capable of stopping it. The hologram faded, leaving a silence so profound it seemed to press against Elise's chest. The faint glow of the carvings was the only light in the icy chamber, their eerie radiance casting long shadows on the faces of the Galactic Council delegation. Each ambassador stood frozen, their expressions a mix of awe, fear, and disbelief. Elder Taylor was the first to speak, her voice uncharacteristically unsteady. This is no coincidence. These ruins were meant to be found, by humans. The implications hit Elise like a tidal wave. She wanted to dismiss the idea, to argue that humanity had nothing to do with this ancient prophecy, but the evidence was undeniable. The obelisk had responded to her touch. The hologram's words had echoed in her mind with a clarity that no translator could explain. What does it mean by fulfill your purpose? Elise asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The Chronali scientist slithered closer, his crystalline scanners clicking rapidly as he analyzed the obelisk. It appears to contain a vast repository of information, locked behind genetic encryption. The system is keyed to human DNA. Elise frowned. Why would ancient aliens encode their secrets to match us? Humans weren't even a blip on the galactic radar 1,000,000 years ago. Taylor's gaze sharpened. Perhaps the children of fire were not human, but their legacy lives within you. Evolution may have merely carried their traits forward, buried deep in your genome. That's just speculation, Elise countered, though her voice lacked conviction. It is the only explanation, Taylor said, her tone firm. We must unlock this obelisk. The fate of the galaxy could depend on it. The team worked swiftly, setting up decoding equipment around the obelisk. The alien technology resisted their attempts, its protective layers impervious to conventional methods. Hours ticked by, the tension mounting with every failure. Meanwhile, Elise wandered the edges of the chamber, her thoughts a whirlwind of doubt and curiosity. Why Earth? Why humanity? She had always believed humans were nothing more than a scrappy species, clawing their way to relevance in a galaxy that barely acknowledged their existence. Now, it seemed the universe had other plans. Elise, Taylor's voice interrupted her thoughts. We need you. She turned to see the group clustered around the obelisk, their tools discarded in frustration. The Chronali gestured toward the glowing surface. We cannot bypass the genetic locks. It must be activated by a human. Elise hesitated. The idea of touching the alien monolith again sent a shiver down her spine. The last time, it had felt like the obelisk had reached into her mind, unraveling her thoughts. What would it do if she tried again? But there was no choice. The council wouldn't leave this vault without answers, and neither would she. Taking a deep breath, Elise stepped forward and placed her hand against the obelisk. The surface was warm, almost alive, and the carvings flared brightly in response. A rush of energy surged through her, and her vision blurred as the chamber dissolved around her. She was standing in a field of stars. Countless points of light stretched out in every direction, pulsing with a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat. In the distance, a massive figure emerged, a humanoid silhouette composed of fire and shadow. Its voice rumbled through the void, deep and resonant. You are the last spark of a dying flame, it said. The children of fire forged the galaxy in their struggle against the abyss, but their time has passed. You carry their strength, their resilience. You must decide if the fire will rise again, or be extinguished forever. Elise's voice trembled as she spoke. Why me? Why humanity? Because only those born of hardship can endure what is to come, the figure replied. You have thrived where others would perish. But survival is not enough. To face the abyss, you must become more. The vision began to fade, the stars collapsing inward until Elise was thrust back into the chamber. She gasped, her knees buckling as she fell to the icy floor. Taylor and the others rushed to her side. What happened? Taylor asked. I saw them, Elise stammered. The ones who came before. They called themselves the Children of Fire. They fought the abyss, and lost. The room fell silent. What else did they say? Taylor pressed. Elise met her gaze, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. They said we're their only hope. Humanity has to rise, or everything will fall to the abyss. The obelisk responded to her activation, releasing a cascade of data that the Chronali scanners could barely contain. Star charts, ancient records, and technological blueprints flooded their systems, overwhelming even the most advanced processing units. Amidst the chaos, one message stood out, a series of coordinates flashing in bold, urgent patterns. Taylor's expression darkened as she analyzed them. These coordinates lead to the Outer Rim, she said. A region long believed to be empty. If the abyss stirs, it will begin there. Elise felt the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. Humanity was no longer just an observer in the galaxy's struggles. They were now its front line. Then we have no choice, she said. We go to the rim. If this is our legacy, it's time we face it. As the team prepared to leave the vault, Elise couldn't shake the feeling that they had just crossed the threshold. The galaxy was far larger and far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. But for the first time, humanity wasn't just a small part of the story. They were at its center. The Council's flagship hung in orbit above Earth, a gleaming sentinel of alien ingenuity, its hull reflecting the soft blue glow of the planet below. Within its vast halls, tension simmered like a dormant volcano. Elise Ward sat in the briefing chamber alongside members of the Galactic Council, a holographic projection of the newly unlocked star charts spinning in the air above them. These coordinates confirm it, said Elder Taylor, her voice steady but her expression grim. The abyss has begun to stir. This region of the Outer Rim shows unmistakable patterns, colonies going silent, resource worlds being stripped bare. It's a harbinger of their return. Elise leaned forward, her brow furrowed. And we're supposed to be the ones to stop it? Humanity doesn't even have the fleets to defend our own system, let alone the galaxy. The Corvex ambassador, his crystalline form shimmering with nervous energy, chimed in. Perhaps we are focusing too much on prophecy. It is dangerous to place such a burden on a species as young as yours. Taylor turned her piercing gaze on him. Dangerous or not, the evidence is undeniable. The Children of Fire may be the galaxy's only hope, and humanity carries their legacy. The words hung in the air like a verdict. Elise felt the weight of them pressing down on her. Legacy or not, she couldn't see how humanity, fractured and ill-prepared, could rise to the challenge. But before she could respond, the room was interrupted by an urgent chime. Elder Taylor, a voice crackled through the comms, we're detecting a disturbance in Earth's atmosphere. Something anomalous. The group rushed to the observation deck, where the curved glass provided an unbroken view of Earth's swirling clouds and vast oceans. At first, Elise saw nothing unusual. Then, a ripple of energy surged across the planet's surface, like a tremor in space itself. What's causing that? Elise asked, her voice tight. Unknown, the Chronali scientist replied, his scanners working furiously. The energy signature, it's coming from beneath Earth's crust. Elise felt her stomach drop. The ruins. The ship's sensors zeroed in on Antarctica, where the ancient vault they had uncovered was now glowing with a fiery intensity. Pulses of energy radiated outward, growing stronger with each beat. It was as if the obelisk had been awakened by the unlocking of its secrets, and it wasn't finished yet. We need to get down there, Elise said, turning to Taylor. If this thing is tied to the abyss, we need to understand what it's doing. Taylor nodded. Agreed. Assemble a team. But proceed with caution. We cannot risk triggering something we don't understand. Back on the icy surface, Elise and her team descended into the vault. The once dormant obelisk now pulsed with violent energy, casting long, flickering shadows across the chamber. The air was heavy, charged with an unnatural electricity that made her skin prickle. The Chronali scanned the obelisk, his multiple eyes widening. The energy signatures are resonating with human biological markers. Specifically, yours, Dr. Ward. Elise clenched her fists. What does that mean? It means, Taylor said, stepping closer, that this obelisk isn't just a repository of knowledge. It's a catalyst. A catalyst for what? Elise asked. For awakening the latent potential of your kind, Taylor said gravely. If the children of fire were designed to combat the abyss, then you, humanity, may still carry their dormant abilities. Before Elise could respond, the obelisk emitted a deafening hum, and the carvings on its surface shifted. Light spilled out in cascading waves, enveloping Elise. Her mind erupted with images of battles fought on distant worlds, of beings who burned like stars, of a darkness so vast and consuming that it seemed to snuff out entire galaxies. She stumbled back, gasping for air. Around her, the alien researchers stared in shock. What did you see? Taylor asked. Memories, Elise whispered, her voice shaking. But not mine. Theirs. The children of fire. They didn't just fight the abyss. They became weapons themselves. The obelisk's light faded, leaving the chamber in silence. Elise looked at her trembling hands, the weight of revelation pressing down on her. Humanity wasn't just connected to the children of fire. They were their heirs, carriers of a legacy forged in the crucible of ancient war. But there was no time to process the enormity of it. The ground beneath them rumbled, and a deep, resonant voice echoed through the vault. The abyss approaches. Awaken the fire, or be consumed. The message ended, and the obelisk went dark. Elise looked to Taylor, her fear giving way to grim determination. It's not just a legacy, she said. It's a warning. If humanity doesn't rise, no one will. The Council's flagship emerged from faster-than-light travel with a violent shudder, its sleek hull groaning under the strain of decelerating into real space. Outside the observation deck, the void stretched dark and foreboding, punctuated only by the distant light of stars. But the system they'd entered was no ordinary star system. Below them, the remains of a galactic colony hung in eerie silence, broken ships, shattered habitats, and debris floating in a slow, mournful orbit around a dead planet. The abyss had been here. Elise Ward stood on the observation deck, her hands clenched as she stared at the carnage. This wasn't a battle zone, it was a graveyard. Entire fleets had been annihilated, their wreckage twisted and scorched. On the planet's surface, massive scars marred the terrain, blackened as if by fire. What happened here? Elise whispered. Elder Taylor, standing beside her, answered gravely. This was Greenland Prime. A thriving colony world with advanced defenses. It fell within hours. Elise turned, her eyes wide. Hours? Against what? Taylor's gaze didn't waver. The abyss. The Council's tactical officers worked frantically to analyze the devastation. Holograms of the destroyed fleet flickered in the command center, displaying incomplete trajectories and scrambled combat data. The energy signatures are consistent with abyss incursions, a Sorathian officer reported, his scaled hands gliding over the controls. Corruptive frequencies. Psychological attacks. They don't just destroy, they unmake. Elise felt a chill crawl up her spine. The abyss wasn't a conventional enemy. It was a hive mind, capable of invading not just physical space, but the minds of its victims, eroding their will to resist. We have incoming, an officer called out, his voice sharp with urgency. Unidentified vessels dropping out of FTL, bearing abyssal signatures. The ship's alarms blared as the enemy fleet materialized on the edge of the system. Their ships were unlike anything Elise had ever seen, black, shifting masses that seemed to absorb light, their forms constantly twisting as if alive. They exuded an aura of dread, a palpable wrongness that made her stomach churn. Defensive positions. Taylor barked, her authority cutting through the rising tension. Prepare the fleet to engage. Elise stumbled back to her seat, trying to suppress the rising panic in her chest. The abyss didn't look like something that could be fought, let alone defeated. It was a nightmare made real. The Council's fleet moved into formation, alien ships of varying designs locking into place around the flagship. As the abyss ships advanced, the first salvos were fired. Bright beams of plasma and kinetic projectiles lanced across the void, slamming into the enemy vessels. But the abyss ships didn't shatter or explode like conventional targets. Instead, they seemed to ripple, absorbing the energy before counterattacking with terrifying precision. The battle was chaos. The Council ships fought valiantly, their firepower immense, but the abyss moved with an almost supernatural coordination. Elise watched in horror as one ship after another was overwhelmed, their shields failing as black tendrils seemed to reach out from the abyss ships, tearing into holes like claws. "This isn't working," Elise said, her voice trembling. "They're adapting to everything we throw at them." Taylor grimaced. "This is why they were feared. They don't just destroy fleets, they dismantle hope." But then something unexpected happened. On one of the Council ships, a human-led detachment launched a daring counterattack. Instead of relying on traditional tactics, they adapted on the fly, using chaotic maneuvers and unpredictable strategies. Human pilots, unburdened by the rigid doctrines of the Council, began to push back. Elise watched in awe as the human ships outmaneuvered the abyss vessels, targeting weak points their advanced sensors had failed to detect. Despite their smaller numbers, the humans fought like cornered predators, each move a desperate gamble that somehow paid off. "What are they doing?" one alien officer asked, his voice laced with disbelief. "They're improvising," Elise said, a hint of pride breaking through her fear. "That's what we do." The tide of the battle shifted, if only slightly. The humans' reckless ingenuity bought the fleet precious time, allowing the Council to regroup and launch a coordinated strike. For the first time, an abyss ship crumbled under the onslaught, its twisted form unraveling into nothingness. But the victory was short-lived. The abyss fleet began to retreat, not out of defeat, but as if testing the waters. Elise realized with a sinking feeling that this was merely a probe. A prelude to something far worse. As the Council ships regrouped, Taylor turned to Elise. "This was no random attack. The abyss knows we're here. They're studying us." Elise nodded, her heart heavy. "Then it's only a matter of time before they come for Earth." The battle was over, but the war had only just begun. The abyss was coming. That much was certain. The fractured remains of the Galactic Council's fleet limped away from the outer rim, their ships battered, morale shaken. But for Elise Ward, there was no time to dwell on their narrow survival. Back aboard the flagship, she stood before the Council chamber, her resolve hardening as she prepared to make her case. "We can't win this war the way we've been fighting," Elise said, her voice cutting through the murmurs of the assembled ambassadors. "The abyss doesn't just destroy ships, it dismantles strategies, overwhelms defenses, and breaks the will of its enemies. If we're going to survive, we need to think differently." The Corvex ambassador, his crystalline form dim with exhaustion, tilted his head. "And what do you suggest, Dr. Ward? That we place the fate of the galaxy in the hands of an untested species?" Elise stepped forward, her eyes blazing with determination. "Humanity is more than just a species. We're an idea. An idea born from struggle, chaos, and resilience. The abyss thrives on fear and conformity, but we're unpredictable. That's our strength." Elder Taylor, standing at Elise's side, nodded in agreement. The obelisk revealed that humanity carries the legacy of the Children of Fire. They were forged in conflict, designed to adapt, endure, and overcome. If the abyss fears anything, it's that fire reigniting. The chamber fell into a tense silence. For all their technological sophistication and ancient wisdom, the Council members were unaccustomed to placing their trust in something as volatile as humanity. But they also knew they had no alternative. Finally, the Vorthan ambassador spoke, his deep voice rumbling. "What do you propose, Dr. Ward?" Elise took a deep breath. "We activate the obelisk fully. The ruins on Earth hold more than just ancient warnings, they hold power. A power we've barely scratched the surface of. If we can unlock it, we might find the weapon we need to stand against the abyss. Within hours, the flagship descended into Earth's atmosphere, its engines casting a golden glow over the icy expanse of Antarctica. Elise and her team returned to the ancient vault, where the obelisk awaited, its surface dark and dormant once more. "This isn't just a device," Elise said, running her fingers over the carvings. "It's alive in some way. It's waiting for us to prove we're ready." Taylor nodded. "The obelisk requires more than physical interaction. It needs intent, commitment. It's designed to awaken what lies dormant within your kind." Elise stepped forward, placing her hand on the obelisk's surface. This time, the response was immediate. The carvings flared to life, light spilling outward in fiery tendrils that danced across the chamber walls. The energy enveloped her, surging through her veins, filling her mind with visions. She saw humanity's potential, not as a mere footnote in galactic history, but as a force capable of shaping it. She saw soldiers fighting against impossible odds, engineers creating weapons from nothing, and leaders rallying civilizations to stand together. And beneath it all, she felt the ancient fire of the children of fire reigniting, pulsing with life. The obelisk's light intensified, and Elise's body convulsed as the energy poured into her. Around her, the chamber trembled, and the ground cracked, revealing veins of molten energy beneath the ice. "It's awakening," the Chronali scientist whispered in awe. "The obelisk is transferring its energy into her." When the light finally subsided, Elise collapsed to her knees, gasping for air. Taylor rushed to her side, helping her stand. Elise's eyes glowed faintly, her body emanating a subtle, otherworldly heat. "What happened?" Taylor asked. I understand now," Elise said, her voice stronger than before. "The obelisk isn't just a weapon. It's a beacon. It's calling to others, to the latent potential in every human. The fire isn't just in me. It's in all of us." Before Taylor could respond, the ground shook violently. A deep rumble echoed through the chamber as the obelisk released a final burst of energy, shooting upward in a column of light that pierced the atmosphere and reached into space. On the flagship, the crew watched in stunned silence as the beacon illuminated the void. Signals began pouring in from across Earth, humans reporting strange phenomena, their bodies reacting as if the obelisk's energy had awakened something long dormant. But the abyss was watching, too. Far beyond the rim, the hive mind stirred, its attention drawn to the beacon's fiery glow. It understood what was happening, and for the first time in millennia, the abyss hesitated. The children of fire were awakening. Back on Earth, Elise stood tall, her fear replaced by an unshakable determination. She turned to Taylor, her voice steady. "This is just the beginning. Humanity isn't ready yet, but we will be." The abyss wanted a galaxy of prey. Instead, it's getting a galaxy on fire. The obelisk's glow faded, but its message was clear. Humanity's legacy had been rekindled, and the galaxy would never be the same again.